My name is Jacob Rosenberg, and I'm the director of Waiting for Lightning. I grew up in Palo Alto, California, and I went to skateboard camp in 1988. I broke my arm at skateboard camp. The camp director's name was Mike Ternasky, and because of that, I ended up carrying a video camera for Mike and the guys who were making the 8th Street video Shackle Me Not. And so I think at that moment I realized I loved filming skating more than trying to be like a competitive skateboarder. So I focused on skating and then filming skating pretty much from that point on. And Mike Ternasky gave me an opportunity to come down to San Diego and make the Plan B videos with him. I think Mike believed in people in a really unique way that was really real. And you really felt it. And you really felt loved and supported. And I think he believed in Danny on his skateboard in the same way that he believed in me with my camera. What was really unique about Mike is that he understood what was possible, and I think he kind of fearlessly went after it, despite what anyone thought. So I think a lot of the skaters that he really influenced or had a positive influence on reflect his hopes and dreams for skateboarding. And that goes with Rodney, Pat Duffy, and Danny Way. What I saw with Mike and Danny was, I think Danny really didn't have a lot of strong sort of role model peers at that time in his life. So I think Danny really respected that Mike was always on his level, but at the same time was also critical of him, was also pushing him. Mike had a really strong influence on creating boundaries, on creating expectations, and creating as much of a, paternal influence as Mike possibly could on this kid who's not used to having a father around. I think Mike's death had a profound effect on everyone who was friends with Mike. For guys like Danny and myself, who had a real specific, special relationship with Mike, I think we were always looking for ways to honor him or looking for ways to pay tribute to him.
Jake has a sentimental attachment to, this story because he witnessed a lot of it with his own eyes, and then we both were mentored by the same person in our youthful years, which is Mike Ternasky. So both of us are paying homage back to somebody that inspired us to become who we are today.
I needed to find my own personal way to pay tribute to Mike, and that's been my journey for the last, 20 years. As I got to know Danny more, I think the thing that I observed in him is his ability to do anything regardless of if you think he's scared. There's so many things that I've seen him do where the average person they just wouldn't even drop into that. They wouldn't even attempt to do that. But I just remember seeing him and experiencing him not being afraid in situations where I'd be like, that's crazy, what are you doing? He just didn't have limitations in his head. I just think there was something in his head that just made everything for him skateboarding, just constantly going for it and constantly trying. Seeing him and experiencing him as a young skater, you knew this guy could take skateboarding any way that he wanted. I don't think anyone predicted that it would go the way of the Mega Ramp, but it did, and it's not surprising considering how versatile and driven he is. So in 2007, Danny reached out to me. We had a quick conversation about him wanting to make a 20th anniversary video documentary on his career in skateboarding, a retrospective. It started as kind of like a video. And I was like, I really don't want to make a video. on Danny. Like the On video is the best video on Danny, and that was made like 10 years ago. And I did not want to do that. I just started to dig deeper into Danny's story and Danny's psyche, and really trying to understand what the story that I wanted to tell was, and making sure that it was the right story for Danny. We really hashed an ambitious plan to tell a really cinematic, big story about who, at his core, Danny is.
To be honest, I felt so much trust in Jake that I don't think he was bullshitting me that he thought he could make a compelling film that could go beyond skateboarding, and that, potentially there was, my life story raised a bunch of components that could make a storyline for a movie real interesting.
The fact that Danny and I share such a deep relationship and love with Mike Ternasky and honor Mike in the way that we do, I think Danny felt comfortable that I would make the right movie.
Jumping from there over here is the widest spot of the wall, which I feel does the most justice for skateboarding and the possibility of breaking a world record. I don't know if there's ever always an explanation for things. I wish I could explain all of this, but Plan B has been like a phenomenon, how it came back, the fact that all this is happening, Jake and I are working together. Just a lot of positive things have happened in the last couple of years, and it's like, we really do feel that there's some greater, force out there pulling us together.
It wasn't at all what I expected, but it was so much better than I expected. I didn't make the film with skateboarders as my primary audience, so for skateboarders to love it is incredible to me because I see myself in that community, and I wanted to make sure that community of people was satisfied with the movie. I felt like if we made a film about Danny that appealed to a broad audience, we would make a successful movie. And if skateboarding happened to love it at the same time, then that's a perfect situation. I have always wanted to be a filmmaker, and I wanted to pay tribute to my friend, and all of those things were able to collide into something that I think is important for skateboarding, and I think it's really eye-opening for people who don't know how amazing skateboarding is.
Danny kind of was one of the original real heavy skateboarders who did really big tricks, did all the tricks really high, and, progressed street, vert, transition, bowl riding. Danny was like, from a young age, he pioneered all of like the technical, heavy, almost every aspect of that.
He's the best skater in the world. That's what is so rad about him.
He constantly pushes the limits on skateboarding as a sport, and also pushes himself as a human, with the physical body of being a skateboarder, of how much damage it can take, and what is it, how far it can push itself.
I learned that from Danny, that everything you do it just to the, to the best of your ability. You just go for it until you just can't go for it anymore. Everybody learned that from Danny Way.
And I think that it's like somewhat of a blessing because it's pushed him so far on his skateboard, but it's somewhat of a curse because it seems like it never stops and he just keeps going and going and going, you know what I mean? It must drive a man crazy.
I'm so hyped. I can't wait to see all the old footage and all the stuff that kind of bring back some memories from when I first started skating. I was blown away. That was fantastic. That was my childhood dream come true right there.
I want to go skate my ramp right now when I go home. I want to go skate my ramp and eat you know what I'm saying? Just like, eat get out and start again and try to go higher.
When you see it all in one place and the story's told to you, there's no question about it. That's what he does, and he does it really well. well.
I teared up a little bit, man, because like, you know, it's like me having like, you know, lived some experiences with Danny and like seen a lot of it through video and just heard stuff. The movie gave a great like look into it of what it really feels like.
I think it's really cool that Jake's come back now, and Jake's the one in Danny's life, connecting Plan B and Mike and all these old things, and now coming together to make this film is like, it's perfect.
The movie to me was an opportunity to potentially, you know, shine light on some things that most people don't know about my life, and hopefully that other people could relate to. And maybe, you know, from looking at how I dealt with the situations and overcame them, maybe they could, you know, maybe it's not a skateboard, maybe it's something else, but just the fact that somebody else to see somebody going through stuff that they've been through, that they've had to overcome and did and still are trying to deal with some of those challenges, but, you know, has a positive outlook on it, you know, is doing good things with their life and isn't allowing it to take them backwards, you know. And everything about the movie here is to inspire people to, you know, to pick up the pieces and move on.